Thank you very much for the presentation, Agustin. Yes, in the same way that Anna told us, we are in a very scientific network now, so the public is probably in some aspect more expert than I am, for sure. And if not, it's because you are working in livestock. But I want to present some thoughts or some experience that I had in this kind of cropping system and quantification and mitigation these greenhouse losses and emission. It's only my experience, my point of view, and I want to focus this presentation in a two-way or two factors that are very important in agriculture, in cropping system. That is, first of all, is the nitrogen fertilizer, because it's the producer of most of the greenhouse gases emission that are produced in the cropping system, but also in the carbon, because we have the possibility of being a sink of greenhouse emission. So I think it's important to have this in mind. But also, it's not included, but is systematic in all the presentation, the water, because we know that water is driving most of the processes in both cases, but also is a problem or a difficulty that we have in the Mediterranean countries, because we have water sometimes, we don't have water in other times. We are very specific region around the world, so we need to keep this in mind, okay? Starting with the nitrogen, yeah, all of you know the cycle, but we have some nitrogen in the soil included in the organic matter. This is going to mineralize. We are going to have ammonia and nitrate that is going to be absorbed by the crops. Yeah, so we have our yield. Some of this nitrogen is going back to the ground in the roots and the residue that we left in the soil. But some of that is exported with the harvest, okay? So we are losing nitrogen in this harvest. But it's important to have in mind that we have different kind of greenhouses and losses of nitrogen also to the atmosphere, okay? But also we have nitrate leaching that is not a greenhouse gas, but also is going to contaminate water. It's also to have some different indirect emission, also water down in the balance. Some of this nitrogen in the atmosphere is going to be back to the ground by deposition. Some of them is going to go again to the system with the fixation in the legumes. And also, if we are irrigating, that in many places in Mediterranean region are using this kind of water, if we have some contaminated or not so contaminated, but we are reducing this water in the aquifers, we are going to introduce also nitrogen in our cropping system. And the most important part of the nitrogen that is introduced in the system is by fertilizer. It could be synthetic, organic, but so we can introduce in the organic matter, in the ammonia or nitrate, but it's going to be driving also the system. And how big or how large are these losses? It's estimated at least in the European Union, but it's very similar in most of the countries. We have an efficiency close to 50%. So we are losing a lot of nitrogen. And what kind of losses we have? More or less 50 of the losses are in leaching and runoff, more in leach than in runoff. But we also have some losses that is like a third that is emitted in N2, that is a loss. It's not a contamination because most of the atmosphere is N2, but it's also a loss. And we also have these emissions that are very, very low, but we know that these nitrogen oxides are very contaminated, or they have a very great potential as greenhouse gases. And also we have ammonia that is similar than the runoff. It's not a greenhouse gas, but produces a lot of contamination, and at some point can move to nitrogen oxides, okay? And the leaching, as I said, that is half of the losses in the European Union. And why the farmers are applying so much nitrogen? Because if we know that we are losing half of the nitrogen, it's easy, the solution, so apply less. But it's not so easy because there is a very, very great correlation in the nitrogen uptake by the crops and the yield produced. So the much nitrogen that they can take, the higher the yield we are going to get. So for the farmer, it's easy. They apply as much as they can because usually nitrogen used to be cheap, not nowadays, but it used. So they prefer to be sure that the crop is going to be moving in the maximum. This correlation is very large. We can see it, but in the farm or in the field, when we move to the kilogram of nitrogen applied, we see that the crop get a maximum, and after that, each kilogram that we apply is not going to produce an increase in the yield. And we say, okay, again, it's so easy. The curve is very correlated. So in this case, we can apply 175 kilograms, and we are going to be perfect. But it's not so easy because this is a year, but this is 10 years. And this curve is going to be very different every year. So which number should we say to the farmer? We don't know perfectly because it depends. So the uncertainty is quite large. But we can see that there are numbers that are more probably to be there every year, and some other that are not so frequent. So we can say, okay, we can move something in the middle, and if the year is going to be quite nice, we can apply another dressing fertilizer. But uncertainty is always an issue in cropping system. But the problem is that many researchers have seen that each kilogram that we apply above this line or this maximum is going to produce almost a kilogram of loss. So that's the impact. And it's the same for nitrate leaching, but also for nitrogen oxide emission. So we need to be very, very careful to not cross this maximum. And moving to the yield scale losses is more or less the same. Each kilogram that we apply more is going to increase the contamination related to the yield. So we need to be very careful with that. And if we go deeper or in a small scale during the crop yield or during a year, we can see that the nitrogen uptake by the plant is usually like that. And if we apply the fertilizer even in 3 times, we have some points where the nitrogen in the soil is going to be quite large, okay? Because we are applying only in 1 point or in the second. And these points are the potential losses because we have a lot of nitrogen in the soil, and we can expect one very big rainfall, we can expect whatever that is going to produce losses. So even if we apply nitrogen quite similar to the amount that the crop is going to uptake, the losses are going to be there. So because of that, if we move to more precise fertilization, could be fertigation, or it could be a slow release fertilizer or whatever, if we can apply our nitrogen more coupled with the crop needs, we are going to get this, or we are going to avoid these potential peaks, okay? So as a conclusion, in this kind of the nitrogen, for the volatilization, if we avoid ammonia forms in the surface, because you know it's going to lose in this way, if we apply inhibitors or acidification, we can handle that. or even if we apply an irrigation that we move the ammonia, is going to reduce this volatilization. For the nitrification, we have another techniques that we can help us also to reduce these losses, like avoid nitrate excess in the soil during the period that we know that we are going to have some kind of drainage, nitrification inhibitors, avoiding ponding also, or avoiding compaction, because we know that in this kind of lack of oxygen, we are going to have this kind of losses. We can reduce these losses. And also for the leaching, this again, we have some techniques. Okay, my idea is to bring some, as you are going to present later, many things that you are doing in your countries. In this starting presentation, I just want to present many things and to open the discussion tomorrow, okay? This brings us to the 4 R's that is very well known. So right rate, right time, right source, and right place. Right place, not only for if we are applying in surface or we are incorporating, that is very important, but also apply to the precision farming. If we know that we have different soils, we can apply in any part the amount that they need. Okay, so easy to say, but very difficult to bring to the field. And some take-home message for the nitrogen fertilizer. Okay, improving nitrogen use efficiency, greatly reduce direct greenhouse emission, reducing synthetic fertilizer, reduce not only the efficiency in the field, but also we are going to reduce all the CO2 emitted in the production plants for the fertilizer, because we know that is very related with energy. Improving the nitrogen use efficiency, reduce also the indirect emission from the water bodies. And also a topic that could link the previous one with this one is coupling farming or livestock residues and other residues in other industries, replacing the synthetic with some kind of organic, if possible, or in the place that is possible, because we are also reducing this emission in the livestock or in the other parts. So now we are going to move to carbon. Yeah, we know that I'm going to focus in Europe, also in Spain, because it's my experience, but I think it's more or less similar in all the Mediterranean countries. We have a lot of degradation processes taking place in all the soils, and in Spain, for sure, we have many things, a lot of erosion, a lot of many processes that are affecting. And also we know that in the agricultural fields, we are quite far from the top carbon that we can have in our soil. And this is data from the European Union. But also we know that, at least in Spain, we are losing a lot of carbon and soil just for water erosion. That is a very important issue. It's not so well known, but also we have some problems with wind erosion, but it's not so problematic like in the water erosion. But also we know that most of these losses are very related to tillage. So we need to handle that. Also, we know that in the south of Europe, our carbon content is quite lower than the carbon that is in the north, mostly because we have different climatic conditions. Our temperature enhance the mineralization of the organic matter, and even our forests, untouched forests, are very lower in carbon than in the north, but it's an issue that we need to handle too. And also, from the European Union, they have seen that in the south, this is latitude. In the south, we are losing more carbon than in other regions. So we need to take care of that too, okay? But the uncertainty is also very large. So we need to know what is happening in each part. In this line, 20 years ago, in the INIA, we made a carbon map, taking a lot of samples around Spain, and we have a starting point of the carbon in Spain, okay? It's not so important, but it's going to be more important later when I compare with other studies. For instance, 20 years later, so 10 years later from this first map, we did the same exercise in this island in the Mediterranean, that is Mallorca, and we see that there has been a change in the organic carbon, and it's not always lower or not always higher, but in some parts it's larger and in others it's lower 10 years later, and it's mostly derived by the soil management and the intensity of the agriculture. So we need to take that in mind, because the things that we do to our fields is going to affect the potential of the sink of carbon. But we also have our Spanish map, and we also have Lucas database, that is an European database, taking samples around all Europe. And we see that we have different maps, not only in the colors, but also in the parameters. And we said, okay, why our map is different than Lucas? So we move to an analysis that we did based in EGP soil project. We compare, again, last year, our map with the Lucas map. So not only the points, but also the methodology that Lucas did in the right, and the one what they did 20 years ago in Spain. We went to the 25, this is the Madrid region, okay? And we visit the 121 points that were 60 points in the national database and 50 points in the Lucas database. We went and we visit all the points, and we sampled in both ways, in the Spanish and the Lucas. We saw that even going the same day, taking the samples, in only changing the sample, the way we sample the soil, the maps are different. And the carbon present, or the result that we are presenting in the map is different. And both maps are done with the 121 points. So the only difference is the way we sample in the soil. So it's important to have this in mind. Also, now we have, again, this map that not this map. We sampled 20 years ago, and we resampled this year. So we have seen that, at least in Madrid, there is an increase in the carbon during these 20 years. So it's important to notice, because we have seen that Lucas is telling us that we are losing carbon, but not in all the places, okay? Another project that we are involved is STEROPS, that, yeah, we know that sampling is important. So we have a very powerful tool that is satellite images. So if we can estimate carbon with satellite images, could be really, really nice, because we can sample only one day all Europe or around the world. And this is a consortium with many countries. We are trying to analyze, and the main objectives are to move not only in local, but also in regional analysis, and also to try to find this kind of disturbing factor, because carbon is not very well performed by the satellites at this moment. So we are trying to correct, in fact, based on soil moisture, soil texture, the residue that are over the soil, and also the salinity. We are in this process. We have seen at this moment that we have good correlation in some regions, not so good correlation in other regions. So again, a lot of uncertainty that needs to be solved. So a lot of field to work as a researcher. And another project that we are involved, and Jorge Álvaro also, is in this one that we are checking how far we can get introducing different techniques in the field. We base the study in previous studies. So we read a lot of manuscripts, we read a lot of papers based on long-term experiments dealing with tillage, dealing with cover crops, dealing with many things, and trying to find what is the top that we can get with each management. Okay, we create some emission factor based in the top that we get with this long experiment with one management, and the stock that we have in the control without the management. We get some coefficient, but again, the thing is uncertainty. Uncertainty because many factors are involved. And also that is not the same coefficient for the different regions or the different weathers or the different whatever. And we see that Mediterranean condition can move in some cases, okay? Again, many research is needed because when you are trying to split and trying to find this factor that is specific for one region, we need more information in this region, and it's not always so easily available. So we need more research on that in order to reduce this uncertainty. And finally, this is an example of implementation or the combination of researching and policies. And in this case, we are working with the ministry, the Spanish Ministry of Agriculture, because as you know, there are some eco schemes introduced in the new CAP. And in Spain, 4 of the 7 eco schemes are very focused in carbon, okay? Extensive grazing, direct sowing, cover crops, and mulching with prone residues. So the ministry wants to know if these eco schemes that are introduced are having this impact that they are expecting. This ex ante that you told, now is an ex post analysis trying to see if it's working or not. In this case, we are going to visit, we are combining with another questionnaire that the Spanish ministry do every year based on yields and surface solutions. We are going to visit in 10 by 10 kilometer squares. We are visiting 3 plots or 3 squares, the 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. In each square, we have a lot of farms with a lot of information from this questionnaire, but we are going to visit 2 of them that should be complementary. One with the eco scheme, another without the eco scheme. With that, we are going to sample in all of them. We are going to try, again, methodology is important. We want to be quite similar to Lucas or complementary to Lucas, or we are going to sample similar to Lucas at 2 depths, surface and 10 to 30 centimeters. We are going to have also pictures for the surface, just to know. And we are going to visit 8,000 of pairs of farms with 16,000 sampling farms. So 128,000 of undisturbed disturbed soil samples. So a lot of samples in order to know what is happening and if the policies are working or not. So the take-home message in my speaking is soil organic carbon can be increased, converting agricultural soils in carbon sink, but the absenteeity is quite high. And this increase is limited, so it's not eternal. We have a roof. We need to know more about this new equilibrium. This increase also produces beneficial trade-off, fertility or water retention capacity, so it's good also for adaptation to climate change. Massive measurements are not easy, and protocols should be very, very properly defined. And other carbon sources, such as organic carbon, should be also monitored, mostly Mediterranean conditions that we know that we have a lot of carbonates and another carbon in the soil, so could be an issue.